So you're considering moving to Falcon, Colorado, just outside Colorado Springs, and we are going to discuss today the pros and cons of living in Falcon, Colorado, because sometimes what you read or what you look at online is different than the reality of living or moving to someplace. I'm a bullet list guy. I love linear checklist boxes, and I love pros and cons lists like this. So I'm going to do pros and cons, and the opposing, usually a pro has an opposing con. Neither of them are right or wrong. Everybody has different needs and different priorities. So we're going to cover a number of different pros and cons today in Falcon, Colorado, because you don't know what you don't know. I connect with people just like you every day to help them discover where to live and invest in real estate and sell property for top dollar when the time is just right. My name is Leif Jacobson. I'm an ex-cop turned realtor, also known as Safe Leif. If you're new to this channel, subscribe so you're first to learn about Colorado real estate. My contact information is below, and I'm super excited to hear from you. So reach out by text, call, or email after this video, or book a calendar event and I'll reach out to you. Whatever works best for you. I'm glad to be a resource for you, and I'm excited to hear from you. So let's get into the 5 pros and opposing cons in just outside Colorado Springs in Falcon, Colorado. So the first pro in Falcon, Colorado that I'm going to tell you about is just being on the outskirts of town with all the amenities that are nearby and minutes from you, but without having to live in town. So there's kind of a vibe in Colorado Springs area where Falcon, people will say to me, I live in Falcon, and they're like, oh, you live way out in Falcon. I'm like, it's 8 minutes out Woodman Road from the north side of Colorado Springs. So it's really not very far, but there's a perception it's out in the middle of nowhere with all the development now and thousands of homes going in, but it's not so much anymore. So you have all the, it's 22 minutes to Costco. There's all the shopping, and from Target to JCPenney and the malls and all sorts of shopping and resources in town really are minutes from here. So that's the pro, I would say, is you have access still to all the amenities without living in town. And the aesthetics and the setting out in Falcon are gorgeous. There's lots of neighborhoods and platted homes, but there's also acreage and land and farmland and wide open space. You literally gaze out to the east and you're looking right out toward Kansas. The opposing con is, yes, it takes you a little more time to get certain places, but we're talking minutes. As far as a commute to work or resources in town are minutes away, not adding hours to your trip. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. It's part of the reason I live there, as far as the resources that are nearby without being too far or adding too much time or distance. The second pro in Falcon, just outside of Colorado Springs, is the newer neighborhoods that you have. There's some new neighborhoods in town, but there's more newer neighborhoods out in Falcon area. A lot of the growth is coming out east because you're not landlocked by anything, and there's unlimited space pretty much because, like I said, Kansas is to the east, and there's no lakes or waterways or saltwater to landlock anybody. So there's lots of development space. There are newer neighborhoods, but one con is that there are less mature landscaping. So not so many big oak trees out in Falcon. There's smaller trees because trees are very expensive to plant for landscapers. So you don't have the mature landscaping that you'd have in a neighborhood that's been around for 50, 60, 70 years. So it's going to take time for the landscaping to grow up, but so that's a big deal to some people. They may not want to be in a neighborhood that doesn't have more mature landscaping. Smaller trees and shrubs that'll grow one day, but they're not quite there yet. Number 3 advantage of Falcon, Colorado is house pricing and land pricing. There's no question you can get considerably more for your money in property as far as buying land and or buying a house out in Falcon. But the opposing con to that is, of course, like we talked about, which is a common theme is, yes, you have to drive a little further, but again, you're minutes out of town, not hours out of town, in order to get way more for your money. So you can generally get 10 to 20% more for the house and the property as far as value if you're willing to drive a few minutes out of town to Falcon. The fourth advantage of living in Falcon and owning a house in Falcon versus living in town is open space. There's farmland, there's animals, and lots of open space, and it's kind of the plains feel coming out of the east side of Colorado Springs in Falcon. So there's lots more open space, and it feels more light and bright to me versus being kind of socked in town. Some people like being on the outskirts of town rather than smack in town. But the disadvantage, of course, the opposing con is that there are less amenities available as far as entertainment, department stores, and box stores and stuff like that. So Yes, it's a little further out. I guess that's a common theme. Obviously, running in each of these is the distance is a kicker for people, but the advantages of feeling open and wider as far as the space and availability of property is an advantage that outweighs that for a lot of people. The fifth advantage into Falcon Colorado versus being in Colorado Springs is less hail. There are severe hailstorms in Colorado. You know, you have from earthquakes to the west to tornadoes in the Midwest and the east and southeast. You have hurricanes. Colorado doesn't have most of those things, but the thing we do have in Colorado is significant hailstorms that cause, like golf ball size hail, that'll cause damage to vehicles and homes, will shatter windows and destroy roofs. And so there's no question that hail is an issue, but severe hail is less frequent in Falcon than it is in town. So one disadvantage though on the other side is it is windier. There's no question with the plains feel coming outside, it's about 800 feet higher than downtown Colorado Springs up in Falcon, and it is windier for sure. And it's a harsher environment with that cold wind. When it's 5, 10, 15 degrees in the wintertime, doesn't get negative very often, but when it's in those cool single digit temperatures, plants and gardens really get hammered. We moved here years ago from Washington State where we had a 2,000 square foot organic garden, and it was so different here when we came and started planting things and wanted to start a garden. And it's a different world when you're living, especially in Falcon, outside of the Springs where it's super dry, the wind hammers things. It can be really difficult to have trees and shrubs survive. And so that is the opposing con, is the harsher weather, being up and out of the Springs with wind that really whistles through. So those are the 5 pros and the opposing cons to living in Falcon, Colorado. Sometimes the things that you read are different than the things that you experience. So I wanted to give it to you from a guy who's been here for years and knows Falcon pretty well and has kind of the reality boots on the ground as far as what it's like to live in Falcon. So again, thanks for watching. I appreciate being a resource for you. I'd love to connect with you. Reach out to me and let's see how I can be a resource for you in any property needs in any way. Buying or selling property.